Hello and welcome to Bread of Life, a daily devotional program which each week features a different area pastor. Our speaker for this week is Pastor Andre Riendeau of Bloomfield.
Hello, friends. I'm happy to be with you through radio and the sovereignty of God. This week, I'd like to talk with you about a topic that affects all of us at some level, forgiveness. And we're not going to cover every aspect, but we're going to look at the heart of it. And to do that, we've been looking at a parable Jesus told in Matthew 18. Now, yesterday, we looked at verses 21 and 22, where Peter said, "How many times should I forgive someone who's wronged me?" And Jesus' answer basically is endlessly. He then illustrates his answer with a parable, a story from real life. There are three parts of this parable, and we'll look at just the first part today, starting in verse 23. Jesus says, "Therefore, the kingdom of heaven is like a king who wanted to settle accounts with his servants. And as he began the settlement, a man who owed him 10,000 bags of gold was brought to him. Now, since he was not able to pay, the master ordered that he and his wife and his children and all that he had be sold to repay the debt. Well, at this, the servant fell on his knees before him and said, 'Be patient with me,' he begged. 'I'll pay back everything.' The servant's master took pity on him, canceled the debt, and let him go." So Jesus tells a story that would not be unusual in his time. A king is deciding to settle accounts, and he starts with a guy who owes an immense amount, 10,000 bags of gold, or literally 10,000 talents. Can you imagine what 10,000 bags of gold would be like? I mean, that's an immense amount. Now, scholar Craig Blomberg gives us an important cultural note here. He says this: "The talent was the highest known denomination of currency in the ancient Roman Empire, and 10,000 was the highest number for which the Greek language had a particular word." What Blomberg is pointing out is that Jesus is creating the biggest number his language would allow him to create. In other words, if he were telling the story today in 2023, he'd probably say something like this: a gazillion bazillion dollars. In other words, the highest amount you can think of. Matter of fact, just to give you an appreciation of 10,000 talents or 10,000 bags of gold, the Jewish historian Josephus reported that in the first century, the entire region of Galilee, the size of a state, the entire region paid 200 talents a year in taxes to King Herod. 200 talents a year, the entire region. This one man owes 10,000 talents. I mean, this amount is ridiculous. So the king does what anyone would have done at that time. He ordered that everything he owns be liquidated, including his wife and children. Now, selling people to repay debt was common practice, but it wouldn't even put a dent in what the man owes, because we know that even the most expensive slave in the first century was only worth about 1 talent. In other words, 10,000 talents, this guy's situation's hopeless. So verse 26, the servant falls on his knees and begs him to be patient. In Greek, it says he fell down and prostrated himself, almost like in worship before this king. He's trying to ingratiate himself. The guy begs over and over, "Be patient with me, be patient with me." He wants more time in order to, as he puts it, pay back everything. Did you catch that? Pay back everything? Would he ever be able to pay back 10,000 talents? Of course not. So he's saying whatever he has to. He's not really believing anything he's saying. He's saying whatever he has to get off the hook. He begs for patience, and amazingly in verse 27, this king is moved with pity, compassion, and cancels the debt. Wow. He doesn't shrink it in half. He doesn't put him on a payment plan. He just completely cancels it. Amazing. Imagine your mortgage being completely canceled. Amazing. Even more than that. Now, the word for cancel, by the way, in the Greek language is the same word as the word for forgive. So there's a connection here. Because forgiveness is essentially the canceling of a debt. In this case, it's a gigantic debt. I mean, he and his family were about to be enslaved for the rest of their lives, and this debt's been canceled. Wow. He's been relieved of an unimaginable debt. How will he respond? Well, that's what we'll look at tomorrow. But for now, just ask yourself, does anyone owe you anything? And would you be willing to cancel all that they owe you? Think about that.
You You've been listening to Pastor Andre Riendeau of Bloomfield, and this has been Bread of Life, a program to encourage you from God's Word.